You think Buckingham Palace is impressive? At $49 billion, it's worth less than what some people spend on their weekend getaway homes. I'm your host, and today we're taking a journey through the most expensive, most exclusive residences on planet Earth. These palaces are so extravagant, so heavily guarded, that even world leaders can't get invitations. But here's the kicker. The combined value of just the top 10 private residences we'll explore today exceeds $50 billion. That's more than the entire GDP of over 120 countries. Some of these homes have more square footage than entire city blocks, and their annual maintenance costs exceed what small nations spend on healthcare. These homes make Buckingham Palace look like a shack. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why the ultra-wealthy don't just live differently, they live in completely different realities. The Desert Emperor's Golden Kingdom. Our first stop takes us deep into the Saudi Arabian desert, where Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has built what can only be described as a modern-day wonder of the world. Welcome to the Neom Palace Complex, a $15 billion testament to what happens when oil money meets unlimited ambition. The numbers that break your brain. Let's start with the basics. This isn't just a house, it's a city. 170,000 square meters of living space. To put that in perspective, that's larger than Monaco's entire palace district. The construction budget alone could fund the education of every child in several African countries for an entire generation. But here's where it gets absolutely insane. The palace's golden elevator, yes, one elevator, costs $12 million. That's more than most people will earn in their entire lifetimes, spent on a device that moves you between floors. The zoo, that costs more than your country's budget. Hidden within this complex is a private zoo that houses endangered species worth $200 million. We're talking about animals so rare that some exist nowhere else outside of this one man's backyard. The daily feeding cost for these animals exceeds what an average American family spends on groceries in an entire year. But wait, there's more. This desert palace features an indoor ski slope that maintains -5 degrees Celsius while the outside temperature hits 50 degrees. The energy cost to keep this artificial winter wonderland running for just 1 month could power a small city for an entire year. Bathroom fixtures, worth more than mansions. Here's a fact that will make your head spin. The 24-karat gold bathroom fixtures throughout this palace cost $50 million. Let that sink in. $50 million spent on places to, well, you know. That's enough money to solve the water crisis for hundreds of thousands of people, instead spent on golden toilets. The palace includes its own desalination plant, because when you're this wealthy, you don't just buy water, you manufacture it. There's an underground bunker city that could house a small town during an apocalypse, and helicopter landing strips that see more traffic than some international airports. Security that rivals small nations. The security here isn't just impressive, it's terrifying. A 2,000-person security detail patrols this property. That's larger than the entire police force of most cities. Anti-aircraft missile systems dot the landscape, and facial recognition gates are installed every 100 meters. The no-fly zone around this palace extends 50 miles in all directions. Commercial airlines have to alter their routes to avoid this one man's home. Satellites passing over this area mysteriously experience technical difficulties. But if you think $15 billion is excessive, wait until you see what happens when Chinese tech money meets architectural ambition. What we're about to show you will redefine your understanding of the word home. The veritable Emperor's Sky Fortress. Shanghai's skyline is famous for its towering skyscrapers, but hidden among them is something truly unprecedented, a 60-story building that isn't an office complex or hotel. It's one man's house. Welcome to the $8 billion vertical palace of China's most secretive tech billionaire. When entire skyscrapers become bedroom, imagine owning an entire skyscraper. Not renting office space in one mine, owning the whole thing as your personal residence. This isn't science fiction, this is the reality for China's new tech elite. Every single floor of this 60-story tower serves as a different room or facility for just one family. The innovation level here borders on the supernatural. Every surface, every device, every atom of air in this building is controlled by artificial intelligence that predicts the owner's needs 3 days in advance. The AI system knows what temperature you'll want your bedroom before you do. It orders your meals before you're hungry. The car collection that could end traffic. Floors 15 through 25 are dedicated entirely to a vintage car collection worth $2 billion. We're talking about over 400 vehicles, including cars that were thought to be lost forever. Some of these automobiles are more valuable than entire city blocks in major metropolitan areas. Here's the insane part. These cars never see sunlight. They're permanently housed in climate-controlled perfection, never driven, existing purely as museum pieces for an audience of one. The insurance premiums alone on this collection exceed what most countries spend on their entire transportation infrastructure. A hospital that puts Mayo Clinic to shame. One entire floor functions as a private hospital with a full surgical team on standby 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Not a doctor on call, an entire medical staff living in the building, ready to perform any surgery, treat any condition at a moment's notice. The medical equipment in this one floor is more advanced than what you'll find in 90% of the world's hospitals. The annual salary for just the medical staff exceeds the GDP of small island nations. When your rooftop has a space program. But here's the detail that will absolutely blow your mind. The rooftop includes a functional space launch pad for private satellites. This man doesn't just live in a skyscraper, he launches rockets from his bedroom's roof. The monthly electricity bill for this vertical palace is $2.8 million. That's enough to power a small city, consumed by one family's lifestyle. 800 personal staff members live in an adjacent building, existing solely to serve the needs of 4 people. The invisibility factor. The building requires 7 different biometric scans to enter. Visitors are blindfolded during transport to the upper floors because the view alone reveals too many secrets. Most shocking of all, this building doesn't appear on any official city maps. It exists in a bureaucratic blind spot, invisible to everyone except those who need to know. But if you think hiding a skyscraper in Shanghai is impressive, wait until you hear about the palace that doesn't exist at all, at least not according to any satellite imagery you'll ever see. The invisible fortress of the Black Sea. What I'm about to tell you sounds like something from a spy thriller, but every word is documented fact. Somewhere along the Black Sea coast exists a $12 billion palace that appears to be nothing more than pristine forest from above. This is the invisible fortress of Russia's most secretive oligarch, the palace that satellites can't see. Advanced camouflage technology makes this massive complex appear as untouched wilderness from any overhead surveillance. Military-grade deception techniques, originally developed for hiding missile silos, have been repurposed to conceal luxury beyond imagination. The secrecy premium alone, the additional $3 billion spent specifically on concealment technology, exceeds the total value of most billionaires' entire property portfolios. This isn't just privacy. This is engineered invisibility, underground luxury that defies physics. Beneath the artificial forest lies an underground tunnel system that connects to a private submarine base. Yes, you heard that correctly. This man has his own submarine fleet, and they dock directly underneath his living room. The underground wine cellar contains bottles worth more than most countries' national treasures, a $500 million collection that includes wines from vineyards that no longer exist, bottles that predate most nations. But here's the detail that will haunt your dreams. This palace features an 18-hole golf course built entirely underground with an artificial sky projection system that perfectly mimics weather patterns from around the world. You can play golf while experiencing a perfect Colorado sunrise, a Scottish storm, or a California sunset, all while hundreds of feet below the Earth's surface. Nuclear-powered luxury. The compound operates on its own private nuclear reactor. Not solar panels, not a generator, a full nuclear facility dedicated to powering one man's lifestyle. The energy output could supply electricity to a major city, but instead, it ensures the wine cellar stays at the perfect temperature and the underground sky always looks real. Military-grade paranoia. This property was built on a former military base, and the security measures reflect that heritage. Anti-satellite jammers prevent any overhead surveillance from functioning properly. Marine patrol boats disguised as innocent fishing vessels circle the coastline 24 hours a day. 50-foot walls are hidden beneath artificial hillsides that took decades to grow. The property has its own air defense systems that could challenge military aircraft. This isn't just wealth. This is a fortress designed to survive the end of the world. But if you think Russian oligarch paranoia is extreme, wait until you see what happens when American tech billions meet Silicon Valley innovation. What comes next will make everything we've seen look modest. The Metropolis of Silicon Valley. Hidden in the hills of Silicon Valley, behind security measures that make government facilities look casual, sits a $6 billion compound that represents the absolute pinnacle of technological luxury. This isn't just a smart home, it's a smart metropolis designed for a family of 4. When zip codes become personal, this compound has its own zip code, not a shared one, a unique postal designation that belongs to one family. It has its own weather monitoring system, its own emergency services, and its own municipal infrastructure that rivals small cities. The land value alone is equivalent to buying a Manhattan city block. Not the buildings, just the dirt. In a region where tech executives pay millions for modest homes, this family owns a piece of California larger than some towns. The annual operating budget of a small nation. The annual operating costs hit $400 million. That's not the mortgage. That's just the yearly expense of keeping this place running. To put that in perspective, that's more than many countries spend on their entire annual education budgets. The private fire department employs a full-time crew that never leaves the property. These firefighters live on site, training daily, equipped with military-grade equipment, all to protect one family's home. Their annual budget exceeds what most fire departments serving hundreds of thousands of people receive. The garage that broke economics. The garage complex houses $1.2 billion in rare automobiles and private jets. But here's the twist, these aren't just vehicles. Some of these cars and planes represent entire automotive or aviation histories. They own the last remaining examples of vehicles that changed the world. The insurance on this collection requires its own dedicated staff of appraisers and security specialists. The garage facility includes a private runway that can handle commercial-sized aircraft, all for personal use. Shopping mall for 4 people. The compound includes a personal shopping mall with luxury brand stores staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Imagine having your own Rolex boutique, your own Hermes store, your own everything, all maintained with full-time staff for a family of 4. These stores carry inventory worth more than most successful retail chains. The staff-to-customer ratio is so absurd that each family member has more personal shoppers than most celebrities have entire entourages. Technology that predicts the future. The underground data center processes more information than some small countries generate. The artificial intelligence system doesn't just respond to needs, it predicts them days in advance and makes decisions accordingly. Rooms can physically transform and reconfigure based on anticipated usage. The earthquake-proof foundation can lift the entire structure if geological sensors detect potential threats. The private 5G network operates faster than most citywide systems. Now, I want you to sit down for this next part, because we're about to put all of this wealth into a perspective that will fundamentally change how you think about money, inequality, and human civilization itself. The numbers that break reality. Let's take a moment to truly understand what we've just explored. These 4 properties combined cost more than the annual GDP of 80% of the world's nations. These aren't just homes, they're economic entities that rival countries. The daily costs that exceed lifetimes. The daily maintenance costs of these properties exceed what an average person will earn in their entire lifetime. Every single day, the security budgets alone are larger than the complete military budgets of 50 countries. One of these palaces consumes more energy than a mid-sized city. The carbon footprint of maintaining these properties exceeds the environmental impact of entire industries in developing nations. What this money could actually accomplish? With the money spent on these 4 properties, you could purchase 2 million average American homes, you could fund complete education for 10 million children throughout their entire lives, you could solve the water crisis for 500 million people, you could build 200 fully equipped hospitals. But instead, this wealth sits locked behind walls, protected by armies, enjoyed by fewer people than have traveled to space. Some of these owners' own children haven't seen their entire properties because they're simply too vast to explore. The exclusivity that defies comprehension. Fewer than 100 people have ever seen inside these properties. The invitation lists are more exclusive than Nobel Prize ceremonies. Staff members sign 50-year non-disclosure agreements, longer than most people's entire careers. Some rooms in these palaces have never been photographed. Some facilities have never been used. Some features exist simply because they can, not because they serve any practical purpose. The inequality that challenges civilization. The total private palace wealth in 2025 exceeds $200 billion. This represents more money than the combined GDP of the 40 poorest countries on Earth. This could end homelessness in 20 nations or fund renewable energy transitions for entire continents. The ultimate reality check. While most of us struggle with rent payments, mortgage rates, and grocery bills, these palaces represent wealth so vast it transcends normal human comprehension. Each golden toilet, each private zoo, each underground bunker represents a fortune that could transform millions of lives. But instead, they remain locked away, visited by fewer people than have walked on the moon. These aren't just homes, they're monuments to inequality, fortresses of fortune that make medieval castles look modest by comparison. The question that haunts society. The question isn't whether these people have the right to spend their money however they choose. The question is whether any human being should possess resources that exceed the needs of entire civilizations, while others struggle for basic necessities. These palaces exist in a parallel reality where normal rules don't apply, where physics bends to accommodate desires, where entire industries exist to serve the whims of single individuals. The hidden costs you never consider. But there's something even more disturbing we haven't discussed: the human cost. The construction of these palaces often involves displacing entire communities. The Saudi palace required relocating 3 traditional Bedouin tribes who had lived in that desert for generations. They were given compensation, sure, but their ancestral lands now serve as one man's playground. The Chinese skyscraper's construction resulted in the demolition of a historic neighborhood where 500 families had lived for decades. The invisible Russian fortress displaced an entire fishing village. People who had made their living from the sea for centuries suddenly found themselves forbidden from accessing their traditional fishing grounds. The Silicon Valley compound's expansion consumed what was once protected wildlife habitat. Rare species that had thrived in those hills for millennia now exist only in photographs, sacrificed for the convenience of underground parking garages and private helipads. The staff who live in golden cages. Let's talk about the human beings who make these impossible lifestyles possible. The 800 staff members in the Chinese tower don't just work there, they live there, in conditions that would make most people claustrophobic. They exist in a strange limbo, surrounded by unimaginable wealth, but forbidden from enjoying any of it. These staff members sign contracts that control every aspect of their lives. They cannot speak about their work, cannot form relationships with anyone outside the property, cannot even leave without special permission. They're well-paid prisoners in golden cages, their entire existence dedicated to maintaining someone else's fantasy. The psychological studies conducted on ultra-wealthy household staff reveal disturbing patterns. Depression rates exceed 70%. Many develop what psychologists call proximity wealth syndrome, a condition where constant exposure to extreme luxury while being unable to participate creates severe mental health issues. The technology that watches everything. The surveillance systems in these properties don't just monitor intruders, they monitor everyone inside, including family members. The AI systems track every movement, every conversation, every biological function of the inhabitants. Privacy doesn't exist when you're this wealthy, not even within your own home. The Chinese palace's AI system maintains detailed psychological profiles of every person who enters the building. It analyzes speech patterns, facial expressions, even heartbeat variations to assess potential threats. Family dinners are recorded and analyzed for signs of dissatisfaction or disloyalty. The Saudi palace employs facial recognition technology, so advanced it can identify individuals from satellite imagery. Every person within a 50-mile radius is cataloged and tracked. Local residents have learned to avoid certain areas entirely, knowing that simply being seen near the property can result in interrogation. The environmental destruction. You can't see. The environmental impact of these palaces is catastrophic beyond measurement. The Saudi palace's desalination plant produces enough salt waste to create dead zones in nearby water bodies. Fish populations have collapsed across a 30-mile radius. The underground cooling system for the Russian palace pumps thousands of gallons of heated water into the Black Sea daily, raising local water temperatures and disrupting marine ecosystems that have existed for millennia. The Silicon Valley compound's private weather monitoring system requires constant atmospheric manipulation that affects weather patterns across the entire region. Local farmers report unprecedented changes in rainfall and temperature that correlate directly with the property's operations. Each of these palaces consumes more resources in a single month than most cities use in a year. Their carbon footprints exceed those of small countries, but environmental regulations mysteriously don't seem to apply when you can afford to make problems disappear. The children who inherit isolation. Perhaps most tragic are the children raised in these isolated worlds. Growing up in the Chinese tower, the owner's children have never experienced normal social interaction. They don't attend schools, private tutors come to them. They don't have friends. They have carefully vetted playmates who sign confidentiality agreements. These children develop what child psychologists call palace syndrome, an inability to relate to normal human experiences. They cannot comprehend why someone would choose to live in a regular house, why anyone would use public transportation, or why people work for money they actually need. The Russian oligarch's teenage daughter has never been outside the palace compound without armed guards. She has never been to a public place, never stood in line, never experienced the simple pleasure of walking into a store and buying something herself. Her entire understanding of the world comes through filtered, controlled experiences. The Saudi prince's children are trained from birth to never show emotions in public, never express preferences, never reveal anything that could be interpreted as weakness. They are raised as perfect diplomatic machines, their humanity sacrificed for family security. Your reality check moment. Think your dream home is expensive? The bathroom renovation in just one of these palaces costs more than most people will earn in 10 lifetimes. The monthly utility bills exceed what entire communities pay for essential services. But here's what really should make you angry. While you're worried about your monthly rent, while you're choosing between paying for groceries or gas, while you're delaying medical treatment because you can't afford it, these palaces burn through more money in operational costs per day than you'll see in your entire lifetime. The wine collection in the Russian palace could fund cancer research that might save thousands of lives. The car collection in the Chinese tower could provide clean water to millions of people. The golden elevators in the Saudi palace could fund education for entire generations. The conspiracy of silence. But here's the most disturbing part: how little we actually know. Everything I've told you today comes from leaked documents, whistleblower accounts, and satellite surveillance. The real truth about these properties remains hidden behind layers of legal protection and political influence. Government officials who try to investigate these properties face career destruction. Journalists who dig too deep find themselves facing lawsuits that could bankrupt small countries. Even satellite imagery of certain areas is mysteriously unavailable or deliberately obscured. There are entire departments within various governments whose only job is to ensure these properties remain secret. Tax records disappear, building permits vanish, environmental impact studies are classified for national security reasons. The future that terrifies, and this is just the beginning. Right now, as you watch this video, construction has begun on palaces that will make everything we've discussed today look modest. Floating cities that exist in international waters beyond any government's reach. Underground complexes that span continents. Space stations designed as private residences. The wealth gap isn't just growing, it's accelerating at an exponential rate. Soon, these ground-based palaces will seem quaint compared to what's being planned. The ultra-wealthy aren't just separating themselves from normal society, they're leaving Earth itself. Within the next decade, we'll see the first permanently inhabited space palaces, orbital mansions that cost more than most countries' GDPs. The ultimate exclusivity, homes that literally exist above the rest of humanity. Which palace shocked you most? The invisible Russian fortress with its fishing village grave? The vertical Chinese prison disguised as luxury? The Saudi desert kingdom built on displaced communities? Or the Silicon Valley compound consuming endangered habitats? But more importantly, what are you going to do about it? Because while you're deciding which of these impossible homes impressed you most, while you're sharing this video and commenting about the shocking numbers, their owners are actively working to make sure you never have the political power to change anything about this system. They're not just building palaces, they're building a future where this level of inequality becomes permanent, where escape becomes impossible, where the gap between them and us becomes literally unbridgeable. Thanks for joining me on this journey through wealth that shouldn't exist while poverty persists. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to continue exploring the hidden systems that keep inequality locked in place. And remember, these palaces you've seen today, they're just the ones we know about. The ones we don't know about are probably far worse. The question isn't whether you're impressed by their wealth. The question is whether you're angry enough to do something about a system that allows this level of human suffering to coexist with this level of excess.